Hi everyone, this is Kyle, and I'm going back to this one rumor that Disney executives are afraid that this new Star Wars movie that's going to be coming out in a couple years with Rey returning is going to be a big flop, just as bad as the Marvels, maybe worse than the Marvels. Now, I'm mainly going back to this because this is real interesting, and I'm wondering to myself, could this Star Wars movie possibly do worse than the Marvels has been doing at the box office? Now, the Marvels looks like they're still updating their box office numbers. There's a report that Disney's not going to be giving out the box office information for the Marvels anymore, but latest I see it's crossed $200 million. Finally, it took over a month to get there, but it's at $202 million. But yeah, it's not going to be making that much more. Its production budget was $275 million, and it might end up being more than that. So this movie's going to be losing a ton of money. Now, this article right here, I went over it already in a video, I don't know, almost a week or so ago now, with a rumor that Kathleen Kennedy is apparently trying to rush the movie into production, get it out as soon as possible, and people at Disney are afraid it's going to be a huge failure. Now, I talked about how Disney people are afraid that it's going to be a big flop. I didn't really go into how apparently Kathleen Kennedy is trying to rush the movie into production. Now, this whole report or this whole rumor, it comes from WDW Pro. That guy, he's a great guy, great person to go to for any inside information on Disney. Now, we had word that the movie was going to start production on April 7th of next year, so 4 months from now, just under 4 months. But people are saying that that's actually not true. The film's not ready to start that quickly. WDW Pro is saying that it's actually going to be starting this summer, which is really only, I don't know, a couple months later, 2-3 months later. So if that's the case, then yeah, I would say Kathleen Kennedy is still rushing the movie into production. And why exactly would Kathleen Kennedy be rushing the movie into production? Well, the speculation from WDW Pro is that now the movie would be coming out at the earliest late 2025, but definitely 2026. Bob Iger's going to be leaving in 2026. Kathleen Kennedy, she is getting old. She's not going to be around that much longer. Kathleen Kennedy's contract, I guess that's going to be ending around the same time Bob Iger's contract is ending, so 2026. You'd have to check that. But the speculation is that she's trying to rush this movie into production as sort of like one last attempt to salvage the Disney Star Wars trilogy, because people did not really like Rey as a character that much. Interest in Star Wars has dropped after the Disney Star Wars trilogy came out. Star Wars, you could say, is dead now. It's a shell of its former self. And the speculation is that Kathleen Kennedy would be trying to rush this Rey movie out in order to salvage the work that she's done during her time running Lucasfilm. Now, will this work? I don't think it will. According to a leaked synopsis, the movie is roughly going to be 15 years after Episode 9, whereas this movie, if it's coming out 2025 or 2026, that's going to be 6-7 years after the Rise of Skywalker. That sounds like such a dumb title. Logically, if you ask me, if they were going to bring Rey back, and the video where WDW Pro and his guest Force of Light, where she goes into this, logically it does not make sense to be bringing Rey back for a Star Wars movie this soon. If the story is going to be taking place apparently 15 years later, it does not make any sense to make a new Rey movie 5 years later that allegedly, story-wise, takes place 15 years later. And again, I think that's just further reason to speculate that Kathleen Kennedy, she's rushing this out, possibly to salvage her work while running Lucasfilm. Speaking of which, it's set roughly 15 years after Rey's victory over Palpatine at the end of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I have a quick question here. If Rey was a Palpatine, she was Palpatine's granddaughter or whatever, and if this guy Snoke, if he was apparently a clone created by Palpatine, then why in Episode 8 would Snoke order Kylo Ren to kill Rey? If the Emperor is controlling Snoke, it makes zero sense. I said this before, the Star Wars prequels, yeah, there were some legitimate criticisms of them. A lot of it was, a lot of CGI, stuff like that. There were some plot inconsistencies, but story-wise, the Disney Star Wars trilogy, it's worse than the Star Wars prequels. There wasn't even a basic plan. And who does that fall under? Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah, I think she gave the directors a little too much freedom to do whatever they want in the movies. Rian Johnson, he took a sledgehammer to the story. She's been firing quite a few directors in the middle of production. Speaking of which, Rian Johnson was supposed to be directing a trilogy. How's that going along? I haven't heard anything about that in a while. Okay, I'm getting off track here, but yeah, if you're going to bring Rey back, and if it's allegedly 15 years later, but the actual Rise of Skywalker movie was from 2019, so as of right now, it was only 4 years ago, and it'll only be, 6-7 years ago when this Rey movie comes out. That's a little early if you ask me. Now, there's one key part of this article, and again, I read this already in a previous video, but I'm kind of posing the question, could this movie possibly do worse than the Marvels? So I'll just go over what WDW Pro said again, a little bit of what he said. Rey is magnitudes higher than that, referring to Captain Marvel. Because the way that Rey works is that when The Force Awakens came out, fans were told you've got to go see all your original characters that you love, and that didn't happen. And then they were told you've got to go see The Last Jedi because you got to see actual Master Luke training Rey, and that didn't happen. Again, you can't have a woman be mentored by a man because that would be mansplaining, just like you can't have a woman be rescued by a man, you can't have a woman need a man's help, you can't have a man be better than a woman in any conceivable way. This is why you didn't have Luke training Rey in Episode 8, which Luke is the Jedi Master. It would make perfect sense for that to happen, but instead you have Leia training Rey in Episode 9. Makes zero sense. Alright, I'll just continue this paragraph. And then they were told you got to go see The Rise of Palpatine because you got to see how this actually plays out. We got a super secret plan to make this all be worthwhile, like we're going to redeem all those characters, and then that didn't happen. Yeah, when they chose to bring the Emperor back, after, Vader sacrificed himself, Luke put his life on the line in order to save Vader from the Emperor, to bring Vader back from the dark side. When they chose to bring the Emperor back in Episode 9, probably because they were out of ideas, that ruined Luke and Vader's story completely. They just rendered Return of the Jedi meaningless when they chose to do that. That's 3 big movies that people were forced to go see where their favorite heroes were desecrated and Rey was elevated. And I think the Disney executives know that this could actually be worse than the Marvels. He added this right here, this is the key part. Could this movie flop worse than the Marvels? Now, first and foremost, folks, I do think this movie's flopping. I think it's going to be dead on arrival. I don't think there's going to be that much interest in this movie. Number one, Rey as a character, people didn't really like her that much. She was, you could say, an unstoppable girl boss. Did Rey ever lose a fight at any point in the Disney Star Wars trilogy? I asked that before, but that's a serious question. Did she ever really actually lose a fight? Did she ever need anyone's help at any point? Because as far as I saw, she didn't. Now, if you ask me why exactly was Rey like that, I have no clue. If any of you have any suggestions, please share them with me. Luke, he lost fights. He needed help plenty of times. Let's see, Luke got knocked out by those sand people. He also got thrown around a little bit in that one cantina bar. He did blow up the Death Star at the end of Episode 4, but he needed Han to save him. He needed Han's help in order for that to happen. Luke was trapped by that one snow monster. I don't remember the snow monster's name at this point, and Han had to find him. Luke faced Vader for the first time, and when he did, Vader beat him pretty badly. Yeah, Luke, he went through his adversity, he went through his struggles, and he came out of it stronger. You saw Luke develop over time. You could say Rey, she was basically strong right from the get-go, and she was strong at the end too. Again, I have no idea why they decided to do that with her. But because of that, people didn't really like Rey as a character. Now, Daisy Ridley, the woman who played her, I think people generally like Daisy Ridley. This isn't her fault. This is the writer's fault. Daisy Ridley, she just, did as she was told, so to speak. But Rey, she's one of those new characters, and she is not the face of Star Wars. Luke Skywalker is the face of Star Wars. When people see Star Wars, they want to see Luke, Han, and Leia. And they're not going to be in this movie. It's going to be Rey on her own. Well, okay, maybe you could bring Mark Hamill into this movie. This movie's going to be coming out in a few years. You could maybe have Mark Hamill come back as Luke and appear as a ghost or something, but honestly, if you ask me, I think that would be a pretty pathetic move of Disney to do. Because if you ask me, it tells me that they know that Rey as a character cannot stand on her own. And the other question here, what's the plot going to be? Who's the villain going to be in this movie? Are they going to bring the Emperor back or something again? I have no idea what you can do with this. And because of that, I don't really see a point in even making this movie. This is the only information that I've seen for the plot for this movie. Set roughly 15 years after Rey's victory over Palpatine at the end of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, the sequel delves into Rey's courageous endeavor to restore the Jedi Order, where she assumes a role of a mentor to 2 promising young students, a girl and a boy. As her training progresses, it becomes evident that the girl possesses extraordinary abilities destined to emerge as the future leader, the synopsis concluded. This is really all we have. It's kind of weird. They talk about the girl in this story, but they don't say a thing about the boy here. And then they say the girl, of course, is extraordinary. Yeah, I don't think anyone would have predicted that. But the boy in this story, we don't really have any information right now. If I'm going to take a bet, I'm going to bet this boy's going to become the villain in the story. I don't know for sure right now. We don't have a lot of information, but just something tells me that's what's going to happen. I'll try that the girl that Rey is training is probably going to be the hero, the boy's going to be the villain. Why exactly do I think that? I don't know. I just have a strange feeling that's what's going to happen, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't see this movie doing well. I think it's coming out way too early after the Disney trilogy. I don't think Rey's that likable of a character to begin with. I don't think people like her that much. I don't think she's going to be able to stand on her own. Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel movie, that movie made $1 billion, but it came out during a period where Marvel was printing money. We were at the height of Marvel's success when that movie came out. It was kind of coattailing the success of previous movies. and it was set up as sort of a tie-in to the Avengers movies with Thanos. This new Star Wars movie with Rey, it doesn't have any of that. I mean, the Disney sequel Star Wars trilogy, it had Luke, Han, and Leia in it. I mean, they didn't appear all that much, but nonetheless, you had people going to see it, a lot of them, because they wanted to see the original Star Wars characters. And this movie, Rey's not going to have that to lean back on. She's going to be entirely on her own, and Rey on her own as a character, she was not written very well. Audiences, they didn't really like her that much. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think this movie's going to be flopping. Now, here's the big question. Could it possibly flop worse than the Marvels? WDW Pro, he speculates that Disney executives, they think that this movie could be worse than the Marvels. Do I think it's possible? Yeah, I absolutely think it's possible. However, if you look at the box office for the Marvels, $202 million as it stands right now, and I don't know how much longer they're going to be reporting the numbers, because we had some news that they're not going to be reporting box office numbers anymore for this movie, which was another failure. But $202 million as it stands right now, that is a very low bar. I mean, if this Rey movie is going to fail, it's going to have to do real bad to be a bigger flop than the Marvels. And then the Marvels, it had a budget of $275 million from what we've heard. The Rey movie, it's what we're hearing, it's going to be $170 million to $225 million budget. Lucasfilm wanting $225 million, Disney only wanting them to have $170 million. Which, for context, Star Wars Episode 9, the last Star Wars movie to come out, that budget was $275 million according to BoxOfficeMojo.com. So I don't know if they're going to be able to make a movie for this small budget. If they do make it on a smaller budget, 170, 225 million, somewhere in there, it probably won't lose as much money. So you make of that whatever you will. But again, $200 million, you would have to make less than that in order to be a bigger flop than the Marvels. That's a tall task, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, the worst Star Wars movie to come out, I think, was Solo, and that made a little under $400 million. So yeah, I think it's possible. It's going to be a very difficult thing to accomplish, folks. Now, with that said, I do believe in Kathleen Kennedy. I do believe that she is capable of accomplishing this. I do think she can make this Rey movie a worse flop than the Marvels. I mean, if there is anybody on the planet that is built for this type of task, it is Kathleen Kennedy, folks. We have the right person in charge to be able to accomplish this. But again, this is going to be a difficult task to be a bigger flop than the Marvels. The odds, I think, are going to be against them. I'm going to bet that it does a little better than the Marvels. I do think it will flop. But right now, I'm going to bet it's not going to flop as big as the Marvels does. But I am not counting Kathleen Kennedy out. I think she is absolutely capable of this. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, if you consider hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Take care until then.